You're probably finding a lot of songs are just built from four chords, which is great, makes it really easy to play. The downside though can be our rhythm playing can become very boring and monotonous, especially if we're using the same rhythm patterns over and over. So how do we make our rhythm playing less boring and more interesting? Well, we're going to look at 5 different ways we can do that today. We'll add a bonus one at the end as well, so stick around to hear it. My name is Stephen, I am the co-founder of the Murphy School of Music, and in this channel we post lots of in-depth tutorials on everything to do with music. We're going to look at 5 different ways we can make our rhythm playing less boring and more interesting, and we'll also look at a bonus point at the end, so stick around for that. We're going to be using the same 4-chord pattern throughout this video so that we can learn to add things to it. We're going to start with a C chord, into A minor, then to F, and finally to G. We're going to add a rhythm to that, and then we're going to add 5 different things that can really spice up this piece. First thing we're going to talk about is going to be variations in our playing. It's very unlikely you'll have heard a song that uses a 1-bar rhythm throughout every single bar in that song. Instead, they add a variation to the bars. So if we had a 1-bar rhythm, it would sound something like this. Now our chords sound fine, our rhythm is correct, it fits in with the song, but it is very dull. So what can we do? We can add those variations in to really make them sound better. Maybe something like this. Just adding a few little variations in can make a big difference to our rhythm playing. Suddenly it sounds much more natural, it's less boring, it's flowing through the song much better. Especially when we use those rhythms to contrast another instrument like the drums or the vocal melody. It really does add more flavour to what we're playing then. You may have noticed as well I went into 16ths rather than just sticking to 8th notes. This too can make it sound much more interesting. It gives us such a wider range of possibilities with our rhythm playing rather than sticking to that 8th beat pattern where we really limit ourselves on what we can do rhythm wise. Point number 2 then, we're going to add scratch rhythms to our play. Now scratch rhythms, you've probably heard in different songs, are really muted strums that we're adding. So we're not hearing any note from the chord, but we do hear that scratch sound. We can often use that between chords to mask our changes, but also add some extra flavour to it. I'll show you what I mean. Often putting it there, we're masking the change, but we're adding some more dynamic to our playing. If we add a little bit more into that as well, we're going to add some staccato rhythms. Staccato means cutting a note short. This really adds some flavour when we're adding variations and particularly when we're adding scratch rhythms in. So there we had our variations, our staccato and our scratch rhythms. These really do add a lot to our playing, make it much less boring than the original rhythm that we had. So moving on to point number 3 then, we're going to add passing notes between our chords. What are passing notes? Well, if we look at the chord pattern we've got a C followed by an A minor. Now if we look at the bass notes to those 2 chords, or the root notes, we've got our C for our C chord, and we've got an A for our A minor chord. But between that we've got 2 frets, B and B flat. If we use one or even both of those, we can pass through down to the next chord. So if we go from C, B, A minor, we've got that nice pass through, passing down. You may have heard this called a run down. We can really hear those notes running down in order. So we can hear those notes passing down and up, also ascending through to the next chord. That way, again, we're adding much more value to our rhythm playing already. We've added our variations, we've added our staccato along with our scratch rhythms, and we've added passing notes. Moving on to point number 4, we can add notes to our chords. We can take it from a normal major or minor chord into perhaps a suspended chord, or perhaps into a 6th, or perhaps into a 7th, and add 9, a major 9. There's almost endless possibilities we can add, and endless combinations definitely we can add. We don't want to go too crazy with this. If we do, we're going to lose the actual feel for our song. We're just going to sound like we're trying too hard. So simplicity is often the key to this. So we're just going to add a couple in. I'm going to start off with our C chord. I'm going to turn it into a C suspended 4, meaning I'm suspending the 3rd degree, in this case the E, of the chord, and replacing it with the 4th degree, in this case the F. So our little finger is going to go on the F note, which is the 3rd fret of the 4th string. And we're going to avoid any other E's in there as well, just to make sure we do suspend the E. Then as we move through to our A minor, we're going to make that into an A minor 7th by removing our 3rd finger. We were adding a G note into it, so our chord now comprises of A, C, E and G. We can hear the difference there. We're going to keep our F chord the same, so we're not adding too much. But then as we move through to our G chord, we'll pass from a G into a G add 9 by adding the A note. In this case, we're going to add it on the 2nd fret of the 3rd string. And we get our G add 9. So we've got our chords we're going to use, but we're not going to change or just use that version of the chord. We're going to change halfway through the bar so that we hear the G chord go into a G add 9 or the C chord go into a C sus 4. Let's hear what that sounds like. So there we hear a lot of the things we've just talked about combined into one. And we really hear it much more natural kind of sounding, much more interesting with our passing notes, staccato rhythms, our scratch rhythms. These all make them sound much more interesting. Again, we might not want to add all of these things at once. It might be a bit too much. It might take away from the song, particularly other instruments or other elements of the song. Point number 5. We're going to be talking about accents. Now, accent in music literally just means making something louder. We're emphasizing a particular beat or a couple of beats in a bar, perhaps. So I'm going to be emphasizing the and of beat number 2 throughout these bars. Listen to see if you can hear that. So we can hear the and of 2 being louder than the other rhythms we're playing, than the other strums. This again adds much more emphasis and dynamic, especially if we have some other instruments emphasizing the same note or the same beat. It really does add some dynamic to it. Now there's our 5 points for making our rhythms less boring and far more interesting. But I did say we'd add a bonus to that. So we're going to do that with our accents. Now we are going to add the accents, but this time we're going to add palm muting so that we can really emphasize those accents. So to do that, I'm going to change my rhythm slightly now. I'm just going to have my rhythm as... So together with our palm mutes and our accents, we really make our playing dynamic, soft and loud throughout the same bar. We're doing that by palm muting through most of the bar, our right hand just dampening the string slightly, and then we lift off with the accented note. There we really hear our muted notes compared to our accented notes. So I hope this video has helped you. Don't forget to hit subscribe and like our videos so you can learn when we post more tutorials to help you learn the guitar. In the meantime, keep up the practice and we'll see you soon.